Hello, welcome back to the Wargaming table for the first time in a long time. I last made a video of physical wargaming in August. I filmed another one in September, but it never made it through editing because it was mostly just me fumbling with some end turn rules. And then ultimately realizing that everything I had just done was wrong and I was too embarrassed to even post the bloody thing. But the cool thing about today's video is that I actually have some experience recap of the Compass Games Expo that took place last weekend for me. Whenever I edit this, it might be another week, but who knows. Point is, took place over Veterans Day, and it was great. I loved every second of it. I didn't know what to expect. I've never been to any sort of conference, expo, never done anything like that. So it was my first time, and it was really nice. So I didn't really have an agenda going in. I just wanted to bum around and see what looked good. And to me, what ended up looking really good were two games that I ended up buying. The first was War for America. So I sat and watched the designer of this game, Gilbert Collins, and another game designer play a cross between War for America and an old Avalon Hill game called 1776. And what they were doing was really interesting. But this game in particular, I think is probably exactly what I was looking for in a Revolutionary War game. So it is somewhat card driven. There's a nice stack of event cards and strategic cards. But it's played with D6s, thank God, no D10s. There's a short errata list when you first open it. Not bad, honestly. I was playing another game that I did play that I ended up not liking as much as I thought I would, was the Conquistadors. And I thought I would love that game. It's right up my alley. I love, that period of history. I love exploration games, kind of 4X type games. But I found it to be kind of a slog. There were a lot of errata in that, and we were playing with 4 players, so we had a lot of people who were, pretty confident with the rules, and we were getting more and more confident as the game went on. But one, we were rolling kind of bad, so we ended up infesting about half of North America with mosquitoes. So like all the, if you ever played the game, there's a whole bunch of legend areas that are in North America, and then Central America, that's where all the empires are. Because we were only playing on the north part of the map. That's all we had room to set up. But it ended up being 6 hours of kind of slog. So I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would. And from what the owner of the game told me, it's kind of always like that. Like, yeah, you get better experiences when you roll better. But he said the game is always hard. You never really get to the point where you're, consistently winning, so to speak. And the ultimate victory conditions are pretty ridiculously hard. Like, you need a lot of victory points, which means you need a lot of gold. So it's a hard game to win and to feel like you're accomplishing something. So I decided I'll leave that one for now. Maybe another edition will come out someday that has the errata fixed, because the the board was misprinted. There were missing pieces, cards were misprinted, rules were misprinted. So there was a fair amount of errata, and frankly, none of it made the game easier to play, and it was already a difficult game, not rules-wise to play, but it was just a difficult game, and it was meant to be. And I have no problem with a difficult game, but when it's difficult and very, very slow to get going, that's when, I start second guessing whether I should buy it. So I didn't end up buying that one. I thought I would. I did not. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but that was just my opinion. So the charts in this game, in War for America, another reason I really love Compass in general is the charts that they do are really nice to read, very readable. And I like that they always have a little bit of thematicness. So kind of looks like parchment paper. I think it looks good. I don't know all the rules of this game yet, but essentially it's just a strategic. You're trying to, as the Americans, you're trying to form your army, and in this case you can get 3 armies. So you can have the Army of the North, Washington's army, and the Army of the South. And as the British, you have the Army of the North, which is restricted to Canada, Royal Army, and the Army of the South. So those 3 armies are led by generals. So for an army, you have to have a 3-star general for the most part. And for, let me see if I can find some of the general counters here. For the smaller forces, you can use 1-star and 2-star generals if you want to split them off from your main armies. The cool thing about the generals is they kind of give your regular units a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more punch. But they're not the end-all be-all of the game. So these things fell right out. I'm going to have to organize these later, but just to give you an idea of what the counters look like, they are not NATO symbols. They're like actual little guys. So, oh my God, these fell right out. You don't even you barely need to touch them, and they just come right out. But this is pretty much what they all look like. These are militia for the Americans. And the American militia are 2-sided, so they're 2-stepped. So they can, you can break down units is what I'm getting at. It's not like each unit is some sort of historical unit, which is, I was reading on Board Game Geek after I bought the game, ironically, and one of the gripes that someone had was, well, you would know all the historical units. Why don't you just print all the historical units? For a strategic game, having historical units doesn't really make a huge difference, in my opinion, especially at the level that the American Revolutionary War was fought. I don't think it's super important to have historical units. If you want to rename your little forces whatever you want them to be, go wild with it, but I don't think it's necessary for a Revolutionary War game to have units printed with their historical names. But what really sold me on this one, I have to admit, is I'm a sucker for a good map. And this map is really good looking. It just immediately grabs your attention when you see it for the first time. If I can get a bloody thing open. All right. And it is a 2-mapper, so you got to be aware of that if you buy it. But the map itself is absolutely stunning. Stunning. And it looks so good set up. I did get to see it set up. Looked so good. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to buy this. Looks so good. This is the kind of map I love to play on. It is, it's not hexes. So if you're looking for a hex game, it's not hexes. But it still looks really good. And I think for Revolutionary War games, hexes is at the strategic level, it's not really necessary. And if anything, can maybe even detract from play a little bit. But from what Gilbert was telling me is like once the French come into the game, that's like the strategically most difficult problem that you face in the game is dealing with the French as the British. So I will probably make a few videos on that. Like I said, haven't really, barely even touched that. Just opened the box prior to this video, essentially. But I'm very excited about it. But I think the amount of videos I make on it will be pretty limited. It's going to be more of a fun game for me. Put the dice over here. I don't really need to keep the D6s in the box. The other game that I got is Bitter Woods. And this is a Battle of the Bulge game. I got to meet pretty much everyone who's been involved with this game except for Simonich, who did the art. But the game is amazing. I got to learn it from kind of the best players and the designer. It instantly hooked me. I've been looking for, full disclosure, I've been trying to get a Battle of the Bulge game. And I did start with a game called Cells from Revolution Games, which is a very small game. I broke it out and played it with my dad over Columbus Day, and it was a lot of fun. We didn't actually get through the whole game, but yeah, I got the gist of it. I played it by myself. I made it kind of as far. I always started too late, and I never give myself the full 3 hours that you need to play it. But that kind of game, you can play it like 3 hours once you're set up, 3-4 hours. If you're taking your time and it's your very first time. But I'm sure you can play it much, much faster once you played it a few times. And I think Bitter Woods is similar to that in some ways, in that the scenarios that a lot of people play, which are the 6 and 8 turn scenarios, are pretty manageable to play in a single sitting. But I think I'm going to leave out a lot of the stuff that you experience when you play the game, which is, pre-calculating odds to see if it's even worth moving. And I think a lot of the gaminess of the game comes from planning out your moves and trying to guess what the odds of each fight are going to be before you even move them. Because there's no point in moving if you can't win the fight. So it is an older game, but it's been updated several times, and the state that it's in now is incredible. And I definitely recommend getting the Compass one, the designer edition, because it has the most up-to-date rules. It has really good looking counters. The map looks really good. Although the map itself is relatively unchanged from its original version, the way they printed it just looks very nice. Very clear counter, or very clear hexes, very readable. And this is the kind of Bulge map that I like. Simple colors. Just give me white, brown, and green, and blue for rivers. I started trying to work on Wacht Am Rhein, which is the Goss version of the Battle of the Bulge, and holy cow, that game is kind of a nightmare to play. I absolutely hammered my head up against the wall for probably 60, 70 hours, honestly. I was planning on making videos on it, but I really just can't. I can't recommend the game, so I don't think I'll ever make a video about it. I don't want to, smack talk it. There's parts of it that I kind of enjoy, but when a game like Bitter Woods exists, or, probably even Time For Trumpets. Time For Trumpets is designed by Bruno, who helped make this game, make Bitter Woods. And I think if you're looking for a lower level version of Bitter Woods, so Bitter Woods is regiment level. If you're looking for battalion level, then I would say A Time for Trumpets would be your best bet as opposed to the Goss version. Purely because I think it's my understanding that the rules are just going to be smoother for you, and the more important than the rules and everything, because you can make the Goss rules work okay. It's not that they don't work, but the player aids that go along with Time for Trumpets and Bitter Woods, it's things like this. This is the reinforcement chart / order of appearance for Bitter Woods for the allies. And this chart is actually one of the most vital things you can have, because at a glance you can tell, based on what turn you're on, what units are going to come onto the board visually. You don't need to read. In Goss, they had it so that everything is in text. The counters are not displayed on the reinforcement chart. So you have to read all the units. And then you have to match up the words to the counters. You'd think, oh, no big deal. It is a big deal because you're at the battalion level. There's a gazillion battalions. There's a gazillion artillery battalions. It takes you forever. Just setting the game up took me a solid 20 hours. It was horrible. And to be fair, that was all on Vassal. I can't even imagine what it would be like on the table. It'd be brutal. So, gotta say, if you're gonna get a Battle of Bulge game, I would say get Bitter Woods, get this one, get the designer edition. Start with that, and I think you won't go wrong, because my opinion so far is that Cells is maybe a little bit too small. It doesn't give you enough. It's a good game, and it's good for like a quick weekend or something when you don't have a ton of time, but give it enough time. Give it 2-3 hours, and that can be kind of in your back pocket. But if you want a nice beefy game that you feel like you've exhausted all the potential of the Battle of the Bulge, I think Bitter Woods is probably your best bet, because it gives you enough of the nitty gritty without overwhelming you with pointless minutia. I think it really is the perfect balance. And having played it with the Masters, I would say, without a doubt, that would be my recommendation for a Bulge game. There's a lot of great Bulge games out there, and more every day. I haven't played Ardennes, the new Ardennes from MMP. I think that's probably another good option, but haven't played it, so can't really speak to it. But Bitter Woods was great, and just knowing that the game has gone through so much development and has really been played. It's a very played game. There's people who play it regularly, so it's not as niche and unplayable. Like I was talking to some people at the convention who had played Goss, and they said they basically play it every couple of years because they need it. They need time off from it. So if you do really want to get into the nitty gritty of Goss, Wacht Am Rhein is, I think it is probably a good game somewhere under there. It needs better player aids and probably another pass at the rules. The new rules are actually okay. They're not bad, but it needs another pass at player aids, especially for bringing units on. It really is just reading through that stuff it's time consuming, and you want to be playing the game. You don't want to be reading chart after chart after chart of what units you're supposed to have in play. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed my time at Compass Games Expo, and I would love to go back. I would love to go to other conventions that they play Bitter Woods at, as hopefully get to play against some more good players. But I can't recommend enough going to one of these conventions. Doesn't matter what one it is, just go to one. Don't bring in your preconceived notions of what they're about. Just go to one with an open mind, and try to find your spot, find where you fit in. That's all I was trying to do, is just find a spot in the wargaming world where I could fit in, because all the games are great in one way or another. You just have to find the game that you connect with. And I was surprised. I did not think Bitter Woods would be the game that I would fall in love with, but it really was. I definitely didn't expect to buy War for America. That was way down my list, but after seeing it played a little bit and getting to experience it, it really changed my mind. There's nothing that can replicate getting the game onto the table and start moving around counters, because it really sells you on the thing. That it's not just an idea and a bunch of reviews. Reviews are great, but sometimes people write reviews based on they play it once, or they've played it so many bloody times that they can no longer remember what it was like that very first time they cracked it open. And we're like, wow, this is great. If you've sunk 1,000 hours into a game, I think you should recommend it regardless. Even though you might have minor quibbles about it, you've played it for 1,000 hours, and I think that for me, one of the criteria of buying any video game or board game is, am I actually going to play it enough to justify buying it? And if that answer is, yeah, I played it for 1,000 hours, but now I don't like it. Well, you played it for the first 1,000 hours, and then you discovered you didn't like it. I mean, I understand you can change your opinion of the game, but I think you should still recommend something if you dump that much effort and love into, because there's no way you can play these games and not have some sort of attachment to them. So that was all a long-winded way of saying that I am really excited to show a couple of new games on this channel and get back to showing some more physical war games. See ya.